kick off my little intro. Welcome to this week's Roundtable. This is for appliance repair technicians that are aspiring for business ownership and management, appliance repair managers, owners. Every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. This session is being recorded. I'll have the recording up within a week for those that can't stay or are not here live. Tonight, we are going to expand a little bit on some of the topics that we touched on last week. These are topics that are relevant and specific to multi-tech companies or your single tech or smaller companies that aspire to bring on more techs. We're going to kind of pick up where we left off last week and continue on that thread in terms of those types of conversations. Maybe we can start with the overall general topic that TK was just touching on, and we can see where the conversation goes. But it's this concept of you start at one tech, you want to hire a second tech, you ultimately want to have multiple techs. So a good amount of the people, I'm not sure, Hendra, Hendra, are you a single truck operation or you have multiple techs on the road?
Test, can you hear me? Yeah, no, we got 3, including myself, and then we have 2 office, or my wife, another person, she's still working here right now, so that's why I can't mute my audio. So yeah, we're trying to grow because we're just like swamped with work, and that's like the difficulties right now, just hiring technicians, because we can, I guess, we need like 2 or 3 if that's possible, but it's just like it's super hard to get at this point.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm not sure Phil's status. Phil, if you want to unmute and let us know, feel free to hop in. But pretty much everybody here is in that boat where they have multiple techs. And last week we were talking a little bit about some hiring strategies, some approaches to hiring. But maybe we can just start things off with what would be an important, we'll say, like quality or an important, that one thing that needs to be in place in order for you to go from single tech operation to, second tech and then beyond. I see Doug nodding his head.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what EJ is doing, right? I mean, I met EJ here online. He's a one-man show, but before he brought his second guy on, he knew scripts and procedures for his company were the most important thing to get up and running. Even though he's the only guy doing calls, he was imagining that he'd have other employees. So without a good script and without a good process and procedures, I think you're setting your new guy up for failure, because he's not going to know clearly how to do things. So
if I'm hearing Doug right, and I'd love to hear what some of you others think, that you need to have process. You need to have a clearly defined process in place, essentially some format of here is the company handbook, or at least here is the technician handbook. How you operate within this business. I see TK unmuting.
Oh, I was just going to say something when you were finished talking, but I could throw it in real quick. One thing that I think is super important for us to discuss tonight is not just once you have the technician, but how do we find, my goal for right now is to train everybody from scratch, because everybody that's super successful that I've talked to, and I'm not saying this is across the board, but a lot of the guys that are super successful that I've talked to are guys that have gotten guys or gals with certain characteristics that didn't know anything about appliance repair and then trained them to be technicians. So one thing that I'd really like to touch on tonight and hear y'all's feedback on is, how do we find these people? is there a certain other type of industry that, obviously mechanics, HVAC, things like that. But like I talked to Glenn's not in here right now, but he mentioned this last week. Glenn mentioned that one of his main guys was an immigrant that he met at a kiosk at the mall, and that just really impressed him. So like one thing I'm doing with my business now is wherever I go, I'm actually sitting in the parking lot of an Italian restaurant right now. Wherever I go, I'm looking at the people working there, and I'm noticing, different things about people. Because I'll slide a busboy. I'll slide a busboy a card and say, give me a call if I think he would be he's got some, some good hustle about him and really good customer service or whatever. It's just a silly example, but how do we find these people? That's my question.
So help narrow this down a little bit. Are you thinking more of the type of people, or where do you find people?
Both. Where we find them and what are the characteristics. Customer service obviously is number one for me. If I can get somebody in that has good customer service skills, I can teach them how to be a good technician. And they already are going to be a good representation of my company just based off of like I'll give you this example. The two guys that I've trained the first guy that I trained was a horrible technician, and I'd take part responsibility for that. But he had great customer service, and the customers loved him, and that was his only saving grace. He didn't work out, but even with my new guy, he's still learning. But even when I have to go behind him and fix things or go on a recall and find out he did something wrong, the customers still say he was very professional. He handled everything very well. We just want our appliance fixed. And those are the type of people I want on my team.
So you said something there that really stood out to me, and I want to kind of bounce that back to the group through a question. TK was talking about how he can train somebody how to repair appliances. So do you guys think that soft skills are trainable, or do you think it's more of an inherent characteristic of an individual?
Well, they're definitely trainable. I mean, I wasn't born with my soft skills, but I think there has to be a desire for that potential employee to recognize the importance of soft skills. And so when I'm interviewing somebody, whether they are experienced or not, I give them that example of going into a house and diagnosing a dishwasher, finding out it's a bad control board, quoting them $380 to fix it. Customer says, wow, that's a lot of money. I think I'll buy a new one. And then tell this interviewer, hey, all right, sign here. I need a service fee, please. Thank you. Have a good day. That's a bad service call, because you're not helping that customer at all. You're not guiding them. It's more than just finding out what's wrong. It's more than being a mechanic. So I think you just have to have a desire for it. I think it's trainable for sure. This is me trying to be brief. It's like busting my neck up right here.
Yeah, I feel out with Doug on that one. Doug said it a few months back on a roundtable, and I've quoted it in another episode we did, but it's very important and help the customer through the entire process. I'll tell you, I just started training my first guy. It's been about 4 days now. I'll tell you, in hindsight, the thing I talk the most about while we're riding is doing the right thing by the customer. We don't always have to make money, but make sure that you're helping them. And Andrew talked about it a while back about adding value to the customer. And some people do it with tips and tricks, customer education. And really, when it's a walk job, like they're not going to fix it. That's like your time to shine. It's a bad feeling to not sell a job, but if you can make them feel good that they actually paid you and got some value, some good, valuable advice, they feel like you're not screwing them. That's a big deal. And to answer the question about it, to some degree, yes, it's trainable, because you can offer techniques, talking points, to some degree, script material, whether it's written down or not. But Doug hit it again, and they got to want to do it. And in my opinion, that might not be trainable, that part. You need to, more than anything, we've talked about finding somebody with a customer service attitude, a good work ethic that follows through on problems, but they got to be a genuine, good, helpful person, or at least play one on TV.
I think that, really quick, and then all you. So I think that there are certain characteristics that I personally am not convinced you can train into somebody that are going to help their soft skills be way more effective. And an example of that is you need to be able to look at the world through other people's points of view. You need to be able to interact with a customer in their home where you can imagine what they're going through and what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and be able to meet them halfway on that sort of emotional front. I think that that's something that is at least very hard to train into somebody, but it can really make the difference in how you can take a declined repair or something like that and turn it into a happy customer and a repeat customer over time. All right, go ahead, Hendrik.
And I just wanted to add on that, because I would think the soft skill, yes, it's trainable, but it's kind of hard, because just case in point, I have one technician who no longer with us. He was a great technician, but he used to be, he's actually right now he's going back into property management, basically just doing maintenance, property maintenance. The thing is that the reason why he couldn't continue working for us is just because he was like too stressed going to people's house. And it's, I mean, not every jobs are like smooth. Some of them, like especially with difficult customers. So he couldn't handle that part. I mean, he's okay. He's not like completely introvert guy or something like that. But that part he wasn't able to handle. So eventually he said that, oh, I want to just focus on the property, even though he's actually making a lot more money. So that's in my opinion, because also I went to SDI Light last month in Texas, and then went to the business seminars and whatnot. And then I guess like there's a couple of big people with bigger companies in there, like 30, 40, 50 technicians. And then the common theme, in my opinion, is that the soft skills is more important, a lot more important than the technical skills. And then they said that they found a lot, I mean, just their best technicians, they found more in like the hospitality, or like the restaurant industries, because they used to work hard dealing with customer service, just funky hours, and now they have stable jobs, stable hours and whatnot. So in my opinion, yes, it's trainable, but I would say it's better to find someone who already has that soft skill and then just train the technical skills going forward, rather than the opposite, which is kind of like hard. And then we have one that has some good technical skills, but he can handle the people aspect of it, and he just basically quit because of that. So
Yeah, it's true.
And that kind of brings it back to where this piece of the conversation started, where TK was saying, where do we find these people? Hendra just mentioned the hospitality industry. I think TK was talking about how he's watching the bus boys and just trying to, everywhere you go. I mean, has anybody else tried this? What do you guys think about this?
I've dreamt like TK, like for a long time, like, I don't know, since I've been a general manager. Every time I walk into a CVS drugstore and there's an assistant manager busting his or her hump, and they got amazing, they care about the customers. I've talked to a few. It's almost like a scratch ticket lottery, like literally finding that great personality. It's almost like a movie plot, and you go, hey, I got a job for you, and you bring them into a career where they're making great money. It's harder than you think, but I dream about it, just like winning the Powerball. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying the likelihood of doing it that way, it's going to be a long shot, I think, for sure. I think a better chance is reaching out to a technical college or high school and trying to enter or go to some of those work fairs and try to see as many people as you can in a big group and identify those people who have the spark in their eye and that people skill. And if they've gone through a technical school, they probably have mechanical ability. I think there's a better shot there looking for somebody. But I'm still waiting though, still waiting to catch that CVS assistant manager and making their life gold. But you know,
And
EJ, write the script.
I
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
I'm gonna add to that for you guys. I was kind of listening to see, kind of get a grounds where you guys are at. I've hired probably in the last 8 years, 35 plus technicians. So I went from a single shop to a multi-shop to multi-tech. I've got 6 shops across the country and 24 techs. I can tell you the easiest thing that I see you guys, a lot of it is it's afraid to spend money because you've got to be conservative in your money in the beginning, especially when you're single man shop. But the easiest thing I can help you guys with, kind of in my advice wise, is don't be afraid to try before you buy. Don't judge everybody based on this guy has great customer service skills, I want to hire him. Hire everybody you talk to, tell him you've got a 2-week probation period, put him in a truck with you and see how he does. Put him in front of a customer. It sucks who's going to pay him for 2 weeks, but you're going to see right offhand, an interview doesn't give you a lot. People rehearse interviews all day long. Some people are good interviews, some people are bad interviews. The best thing I've ever found with every technician I've ever hired is try before you buy. In the first 2 weeks, I can figure out if you're a good technician, a bad technician, see how you interact with customers right there next to me. It's hard to say this is the one thing that makes a technician good when I'm talking to a busboy. This is the one thing that makes this guy great because I'm talking to a general manager. This guy has a great story. I want to give him a job. The best thing is if you even think there's a twinkle, give him a shot, offer it up, give him 2 weeks, tell him, hey, I got a 2-week probationary period. If you want to give it a shot, let's go. I'll pay you for 2 weeks and see what you got. They can see exactly firsthand exactly how this is going to work. Every single person I hire, I tell them right off the bat, and I'll hire anybody. If you pass a background screen, I'll hire you right off the bat. Let's see what you got. Yeah, I've thrown a ton of technicians at it that they couldn't cope in the first week or second week. And I tell them straight on, it's like, hey, this isn't going to work out for both of us. And this is the drown back, hone some skills up, maybe come back in a year or so. But I mean, that's such a huge thing, is to try somebody actually in the field, because we can guess all day long about how good they're going to be, but you never really know until you put something in their hands.
Powerful stuff, Phil. Good job.
Yeah, Phil, I'm curious, what caliber of mechanical ability is needed for this approach that you do? And does it need to be specifically appliance?
It doesn't. So my target audience is people who've left the military. My target technician, I look for young soldiers, young airmen, young seamen, young Marines that have left the military in the first 4 years, first 6 years. Almost everyone that made it through their first 4 years is trainable. Their mindset's already been melded that they are a trainable person. That's my target. That's what I look for. All of my shops are outside of military bases. And that's my target. I'm looking for guys that joined the military, it didn't cut out for them. They're E3s, E4s. That's my target. So when it actually comes to the mechanical and technical ability, honestly, I don't care. My one question is, are you afraid of electricity? If you're afraid of electricity, I don't want to use you. But if you're like, no, I'm cool with electricity, I can train you how to use a meter. I can train you anything. If you can use a smartphone, you can be my eyes and my hands. Put your phone at what you're pointing at, and I'll tell you exactly what to do with a meter until they're fully trained. I normally have my guys trained in 3 weeks, and then they're on their own for the next 3 weeks by themselves, learning by doing.
I've got some questions. Phil, first of all, thanks for sharing and coming, man, and well done. You're obviously running a great business. I'm interested in the logistics of this 2-week trial because it sounds great. I love the idea of try before you buy. There's a couple questions, and I'll rattle them out and you answer them how you want to. Are you hiring W-2 or contractor?
W-2.
W-2, and how are you maneuvering the 2 week? Like, they're going to quit their job and work for you for 2 weeks for a shot that they might not make it?
If that's what they're looking for. I don't ever want to take somebody who's happy where they're at. If you're happy where you're at, you should stay where you're at.
Well, even
I'm
if they're
looking
not
for the
happy
guys.
without a job.
Yeah, and I tell them right off the bat, I say, hey, if you want it, you have to have the drive. And that's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a guy that doesn't know he has the drive, he doesn't want to apply because he doesn't have the drive right off the bat. If you're iffy, whether you think this is a good fit for you, you weed yourself out because you go, you know what? I don't know if I can do appliance repair. You've already setting yourself up right off the bat if you don't have the attitude that I need. If you don't think you can do it, let's not even try. That weeds out a lot in the beginning too, because I tell them, hey, but all they have to do is be a little successful and I can train them. But that's where it comes when you guys were talking about earlier is finding that drive. You've got to find somebody who wants to do it. And I'm honest with them right off the bat. I said, we got 2-week trial period. I'll pay you for those 2 weeks. The two things that are going to get you to leave is you can fail your background or drug screen, because I do run the background and drug screen the very first day. That's a cost to me. We use Plus One Solutions. It's about $120, $130 to run it. If they fall off the wagon because of that, I mean, I let them go. I still pay them for the time they were there. Unfortunately, you can't work for my business if you can't pass a drug screen or a background check. But I mean, that if they have the attitude of themselves that they don't think they're going to make it, we don't need them right off the bat.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's right. It's straight up front, Phil. I mean, I'm gonna give you a 2-week shot at this, and then we can talk at the end of that. And if they got the drive, they'll probably work out. If they're on the fence, they probably won't have the courage to quit their current job and make that attempt. So I like it. That's really good stuff.
Hey, we got a chat question from Andrew. He's interested to know about what is the failure or success percentage rate for guys that make it past the 2 weeks, and which happens more. I'll add, they leave or you tell them to leave.
Most of them make it. I can tell you most of them make it. If you get to that point where you're ready to make the jump, normally you have the drive. In the last, we'll say since COVID started, because I kept hiring throughout COVID. I've been still in the hiring process. I've lost 2 to failed background checks, 1 to a failed drug screen. And then only 2 that couldn't make it. And that was probably out of 20 people in the last 18 months. And the 2 that couldn't make it, they were really just a shot. They were more of a favor from a friend. I don't think they probably would have made it through my initial screening anyway. I wouldn't have offered it, but they were a referral from a friend. Hey, one of them was like their brother's son needed a job. So we gave him a shot. That one guy actually is still around. He's just not a technician. We call him the shop foreman to give him a good name, but he helps out with the in-shop stuff. We do a lot of in-shop television. So he helps with the heavy lifting. He helps with inventory. He helps track miles on vehicles and maintenance records. So he wasn't very good in the homes. He wasn't good with people, and he wasn't good at really the technical field without supervision. He was just one of those people that had to have supervision.
You know, there's something that Phil said early on that stood out to me, and I think it's important to note. He talked about who his target audience for these technicians are, whether it's hiring, whether it's your own customers. You know, it's really important to have a clear picture of who it is that you're trying to serve or who it is that you're trying to target in your efforts. So just wanted to point that out if anybody didn't pick up on that. It's really important to have clarity in the vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was probably the essence of TK's question. What kind of people do we look for? Where do you go? And Phil knows exactly. Military veterans that have made it 4 to 6 years looking for an opportunity. As a veteran myself, I think you're dead on, and I appreciate you sharing that and giving veterans a shot. That's how I got started. Sears gave me a shot right out of the Navy. That didn't last long because I didn't like working for them, but
I don't think anybody did.
Hey, Phil, for some context, Phil, just briefly, because I don't think I've met you before or heard your story. You've got 24 techs, and
give or take, it fluctuates about 1 or 2 every now and then.
Yeah. So how long have you been in business, and how long ago was it that you had just 5 techs? So how long you been in business, and how long has it been since you had 5 techs?
Been in business 8 years as of July, for my residential side. I actually own a couple businesses, so I'm going to count this mostly as residential. I think that's what everyone's primary caliber is here, is residential. So I've been doing residential solely with one company for about 8 years.
Okay.
I started one technician myself. Work took off so fast and so hard. We added 4 techs within the first 6 months. So we were at 5 techs within the first 6 months.
Okay. Okay.
If it helps, kind of the background of my story on how that happened so fast was luck. It wasn't skill. It wasn't love. It wasn't great business ethic. It was luck. I was doing a lot of television repairs for a company that went out of business. Television, we still do televisions repair, but I was doing a lot of work with them. That business went out of business. They told us on Monday that it was over on Friday. They had 30 technicians, and they ran the entire southeastern seaboard. So a handful of them were looking for jobs outside the field, had a hard time finding it. Found out I started something, and they kind of all just piggybacked. So it was a bunch of people I knew from a previous company I'd worked for when they closed.
Gotcha. What's the name of your company, Phil?
Atomic Tech.
Got
My
it.
residential side is Atomic Tech.
Got it.
I'm Atomic Tech Georgia. There's a couple other ones. We've franchised out a few of them already.
Thank you.
Hey, Phil, did you say you only train for 3 weeks and then they go out on their own after that?
Yeah, so I do 2 weeks like training side by side with me, and then 1 week course pounding in my warehouse, and then week 4 that starts their solo 3-week training before I still kind of like wing over them every single call. They have to call me from the call or call. I have 2 other triage technicians. I have to call one of the 3 of us from every single call so we can verify diagnosis of them. So it's technically a 6-week program. We do 3 weeks of left seat, right seat, and then 3 weeks of on their own.
Do they do everything or just certain type, like washer and dryer first?
We've tried a few things. We learned recently that guys are afraid to do sealed systems if you start them on washer and dryers. So we learned to start them on the heavy, scary stuff, and then the easy stuff follows later. The last technician I did, his very first week, he did 2 sub-zero compressors in his first week. And he's been with me maybe 8 weeks now, and he's quickly moving to my top technician. Ground running, he's about to be my top technician.
You do warranty work, Phil?
I do warranty work, yes.
Okay.
And COD.
Warranty and COD. Got it.
There's two little, for those that have shown up to some of these, I like to kind of pull out these little sound bites. There's 2 that stood out with what Phil was just saying. First, it comes from the real estate investment world coming out of the 2008, 2009 crash. And this concept of when opportunity presents itself, you need to be in a position to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And I heard that in Phil's story with the TV repair company going under, and that was an opportunity for, if I was hearing you right, Phil, it was mainly an opportunity for you to bring on techs, and you were able to take advantage of that. And then there's this other, I wish I knew the technical textbook term for this, but there's this concept in human psychology where it's like we procrastinate on the hard things, and we tend to chip away at the easier things, and it's a big key driver in procrastination. Oh, my wife just chimed in. She's a psychology major. It's called the Premack principle. And Phil, you are you're countering that with your training by, as you said, having them go into the hard stuff right away, so that they're not able to, have their neural pathways paved, in the sense of only being comfortable on the easy stuff and being afraid to try that harder stuff. I really like that approach you take, where you throw them in the deep end. Well, you don't throw them in the deep end, but you present them with the hard stuff first, so that it isn't framed as being hard. It's, if anything, framing the other stuff as being, very doable.
Yeah, and it was extremely helpful. And I sit there the whole time. I like to say they do it on their own. First 3 weeks, I'm always there. And then the second 3 weeks, they're not far from us. They're always we have a second technician basically on standby, ready to bail out if something happens. So we don't like end up in a dire emergency. You know, we destroy a $8,000, $10,000 refrigerator. We've got a guy ready to go out there in a moment's notice to get there and get it ready. We're not sending them an hour off onto their own. They're 10 minutes from the shot, ready to roll.
It's all context. I got to tell you, you know, we've needed 4 techs for at least the last going into the second year now. So lost opportunity kind of beats me up a little bit at night. So now I've hired a couple guys, and when it comes to process and paperwork and all the little things that make a customer get upset because they didn't collect the right amount or forgot to order a part in our software system, it's all these little details that make a lot of extra work for the rest of us. So I've been starting to kind of label these guys as bodies. And I think about the Sears world. The Sears world, I've hired many guys from Sears. They hated it because they were the third guy out on that call. The second guy ordered parts that didn't need because he didn't want to do the repair. That guy knows it. He's feeling disrespected. You know, so at Action, we try to send the same tech back. We try to give him an area so that's, you know, Joe's Action Appliance, and you're going to build that future relationship. But with it being so busy, I need to get these calls done. I'm kind of putting bodies in front of these machines, and I'm feeling like I'm lowering my standard of quality. And so I'm calling it a body. Now, Phil, there's no way these guys in 6 weeks can have the wisdom, experience, and knowledge to deal with that classic cheapskate customer or that tricky, you know, anal customer who's going to like freak out about a torn floor. But you're looking at this from a whole other perspective. I'm not judging. I'm just going, isn't it funny that I'm calling these newer techs who are going to make a lot of mistakes bodies, and Phil's, you know, lifting them up and throwing them in front of a sealed system. It's a mindset that I got to try to understand a little bit better. So I appreciate what you're sharing, Phil, because I think my mindset is not great right now. And if I'm looking at it like that, but I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that we're making stupid little mistakes because they're not quite there yet, you know? So
The hard part with that one is more of, and I don't want to use this as the word that is, but I don't really have a good way to explain. It's more of a desperation. You're desperate to get the guys right. And the guys will see that. They're like, hey, this guy needs me. They know they can slack off a little bit. They don't think you have options. And I don't know how good you guys are. You know, I have a couple guys. I mean, one of them asked me to be the best man at his wedding, and he's my guy that has a problem with putting in his notes. So, you know, they even some of my guys, they get the feeling because they know I'm in a labor. I'm trying to hire like a banshee. They know exactly what's going on. They're not oblivious to business. I'm booked, you know, 7 days out. And they're like, well, I'm 7 days out. What would you do if I didn't run 45 calls a week? So they look into that and they go, you know, they kind of slack for that. Part of the help for that same thing is to put somebody else to help be that middle person. We do have an office staff, and they're assigned a certain number of technicians. And if a technician has any problems at all, that staff member, they're also kind of a gatekeeper for me, because I just can't be held down with every single customer. I know it sounds like bad omen on me to say that. But I have great staff that can take care of customers just as well as I can. They're my, you know, my escalation teams. We call them buckets. Everybody has their own bucket, which is their job. They all have their own buckets, and we give them their bucket list for the day of what they need to do to kick that bucket over and finish their jobs. So it kind of helps us to have a lot of support staff in place for each tech. I know it's hard to say that when you're starting off and you're a one-man tech trying to go to 2, and you're like, okay, when is the right time to hire an office staff while I'm still in the field? When is the right time? And the hardest part is there's no good answer for that. My personal answer for that is when I have 5 calls booked or 5 days out booked, it's time for another technician. Every time we hit our 5th day, we start hiring again. We actually never stop hiring, but we sweeten the pot a little bit and start sign-on bonuses when we get to 5 days out.
Gotcha. Thanks, Phil.
Phil, you mentioned office staff and customer service, and said you had 24 techs, but was it, you said 6 locations?
Yeah, 6 locations.
So at what point did you hire a second, if you did, CSR? And also, are you or have you considered having one CSR team to answer the calls for all of the locations?
So we do have a CSR team that answers for most of the locations. Every location has their 1 or 2 CSRs, depends on the level of tech. So I'm in Augusta, Georgia, and I just opened a new shop in Dayton, Ohio. That location has 1 CSR for 3 technicians. The workload's not quite as heavy there. But then I have 4 phone CSRs in Augusta, Georgia that handles a couple of the shops. But my phone CSRs don't know the needs of my Dayton, Ohio customers as well as a CSR in Ohio. So it becomes back to where we talk about process. We have a very intricate process on who's responsible. If our phone ring, we have a phone number for there, the phone rings to that shop. If that CSR is on the call, it will ring over to another CSR in another location if they're available. But we try to make sure every location gets their own CSR that understands the needs of that region.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, get it. One more. Are you still running calls? And if not, regularly, at what point do you think that it was appropriate to come off the rip?
I set a value. So I hired a business coach. One of the best things I ever did was hire a business coach to come look at my process, because I look at my process as it's perfect. I made it, it must be perfect. I hired an independent business coach to look at my process and tell me why I was so wrong in that process. And that business coach told me my dollar amount per hour. I don't really want to say it out loud just because there's a recording. But my business coach says, if it costs this much, then you do it. If it's less than that, they do it. And that was probably the best life lesson I ever got in business. My business coach told me, if it's under this dollar amount, hire somebody.
Mhm.
And that's the process. So if that process costs me below my dollar amount, they run it. So I do run service calls when it comes to a point, one, taking care of customers. I can't be at all my locations. I can be at 3 of them. Those 3 areas that I can be in, if I get some, calls in, I don't want to reschedule customers. I will run a technician's route for them. And then I do my business activities at night when I get home.
Really quick, I just want to jump in. I think I'm going to wrap up the recorded session and then we keep talking off of recordings. But Phil just talked about this really valuable advice that his business coach gave. And recently I was using this saying of focus on your $1,000 per hour activities. So just in closing, just to remind people watching this recording, those that haven't heard this here, think of what kind of value you and your time can bring to your business, and then ask yourself, is XYZ task or process going to be bringing in less value? Well, let me look at hiring or delegating or outsourcing that work so that I can focus my time on the work that is going to be higher value add to the business. I'm going to go ahead and close that, use that to close out the recording. Thursdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then let's keep going with the after hours.